us in this work. So why Dean? Dean was founded in 2014 as a direct response to persistent equity gaps in educational attainment and economic opportunity. Historically, underrepresented learners had lower post-secondary enrollment, persistence, and completion rates, and were bearing a disproportionate burden of navigating a system that wasn't designed for them. And we know from the Colorado Talent Pipeline report, from national thought leaders like Georgetown Center on Education and Workforce, from National Foundation Research from Lumina, that post-secondary completion is a reliable ticket to living wage employment and economic security. And yet persistent barriers are hindering learners from realizing their full academic and their full economic potential. And COVID-19 further revealed these disparities. Today, you're going to hear more about the strategies we're employing to address these disparities. But for now, I'd like to turn it over to Katie Zabek, our strategic data consultant, to share a little more about the data. Katie?
Thanks so much, Therese. For those of you who know me, you know that I love data. And the reason is that it grounds us and it forces us to focus on what is essential. The vast majority of good jobs in Colorado require some sort of education beyond a high school diploma. And 89% of tier 1 jobs in Colorado, that is jobs that lead to a living wage for a family, require education beyond a high school diploma. We know that we know this from the Talent Pipeline report, which is put out by the Colorado Workforce Development Council in partnership with many of our state agencies who are represented here. And we know that because of this demand for educated workers, the Colorado Department of Higher Education has set a goal that 66% of adults in Colorado attain a post-secondary credential. This doesn't mean that everyone has to pursue a 4-year degree. In fact, we know that many certificates and associate's degrees lead to living wage jobs. So the goal is inclusive of all credentials. Unfortunately, we have a long way to go in terms of increasing attainment, particularly for our homegrown talent. In Denver public schools, only 24% of graduates receive a post-secondary credential within 6 years of graduation. Colorado also has some of the largest equity gaps in our nation. Our Latinx and Hispanic populations, our Black and African American populations, and our low income populations have much further to go to reach economic security. So let's look at these numbers more closely. This graph shows college going and credential attainment, credential completion rates for race ethnicity groups. Only 46% of the Latinx and Hispanic DPS graduates even go on to enroll in a post-secondary program, and only 14% have completed that program within 6 years of their graduation. For our African American or Black students, 52% go on to enroll in post-secondary education, and only 20% complete post-secondary education within 6 years. For our white students in Denver public schools, our white graduates in Denver public schools, they go at a slightly higher rate than the overall state percent, so 58% compared to the state average of 56.6%, but only 31% of those graduates go on to complete their credential. So if you look at this, we know that some populations have much further to go than others. These same trends persist if you look at things by income. So this graph shows again who is going to college and who is getting a credential by income. So we use free and reduced lunch status as a proxy for low income, and only 52% of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch who are graduates of DPS went on to enroll in post-secondary education. 20% of them completed their post-secondary education, compared to 58% of students who are attending college who were not qualified for free and reduced lunch, and 31% who completed. I think there's one final point I want to underscore here, and that's that when you look at both race and income, the disparities don't disappear. In fact, in some cases, the racial disparities actually get worse when you look at it by race and income. So that is why we do this work, and that is what those are the challenges that Dean is here to address.
Thanks, Katie. The data story that Katie shared really affirms this need for collaborative learner-centric approach. And as Katie said, that is the work of Dean. Dean has laser focus on creating a more equitable and a more just system that serves all learner and provides multiple paths to stackable credentials that lead to high wage, in demand, and ideally pandemic-proof jobs. You know, I talk about this a lot in talks I've given, but I really want to address this because we know that no single policy, no single program, no single organization has or can solve the complex problems of educational attainment and social mobility alone. We must work together. So how do we work together? Dean's Pathways Strategy. So Dean has developed a pathways strategy that's designed to close equity gaps and strengthen our talent pipeline. The strategy has 5 components: partnership and collaboration, academic alignment, student support, data technology, and communications, creating a virtuous cycle. I'll start with partnership and collaboration. That's really about creating a shared vision across multiple partners, identifying action and success measures, and building an accountability for how we do work together. Academic alignment is about creating clear academic and career maps that connect K-12 to post-secondary to employment and really take the guesswork out of the process. Within these maps, we're building in accelerators, post-secondary accelerators like concurrent enrollment, work-based learning, industry certifications. And now we know those aren't the only post-secondary accelerators, but those are the ones that we're focused on now in this work. And those accelerators launch learners onto post-secondary pathways. Also, as we're designing this academic alignment, we're keeping the adult learner in mind so that we're ensuring alignment with the adult learning population to create more efficiency in our system. When we talk about student support, we're talking about how we wrap our arms around learners to pull them through those pathways. So student supports, we're talking about aligned counseling and advising strategies that focus on retention, enrollment, recruitment, completion, and intentional focus on smoothing transitions so it is a seamless and easy experience for learners. And finally, ensuring that all learners have both access to and supports along their pathway as they move to completion. Data and technology is part of our accountability work. We are working to improve data utilization across partners, creating common definitions, standard practices to collect and analyze data together, using disaggregated data to look at how populations are moving through pathways and to form our practices and strategies to improve their experience and the success measures. And finally, utilizing data to measure how a grand pathway strategy increases credential completion and closes equity gaps. And finally, but not last, communications, which kind of greases it, makes it happen. And that's creating a strong and consistent feedback loop that highlights both our success and the opportunities of our implementation and addresses equity. Equity as a core value that is communicated often, that is communicated strongly, and that is communicated with urgency. Through this pathway strategy, Dean is working with partners to connect every learner to programs and credentials that lead to good jobs. Together, we're building a pathways system. This system is often referred to as a guided pathway system, or GPS. And GPS is a perfect way to think about how this system can work for students. Think of getting directions on your phone, where your destination is family living wage work. The GPS on your phone provides you with clear directions, multiple options, alternate routes. And if you need to get off route, it helps you exit off. And when you're ready, it helps you easily find your way back on. The system that we are collaboratively designing is clear, it is tailored, there is no single right path. Education and career experiences count, and importantly, learners don't need to be technical experts to navigate the system. Dean is helping design the system, remove barriers, and develop efficient pathways to get learners where they want to go. Through this strategy, we have intended outcomes. Those outcomes are increasing the number and diversity of learners who enroll, who persist, who complete a high-value credential, and who earn a family living wage. Another strategy outcome is working with our partners to build capacity and accelerate and raise up best practices. Scaling those best practices will help us forge a national model for closing equity gaps. So Dean's Pathways work has been recognized. It's been recognized by the Lumina Foundation. We were designated a national talent hub and recognized by JP Morgan Chase. We were the first of their national partners to be part of the New Skills Ready Network. We have many partners here today who support our work, and I want to say thank you. Thank you for believing in a collaborative strategy. Thank you for investing in a pathway strategy that will move more students to a high value credential completion and family living wage employment. You know, over the next 45 minutes, we'd like to share a little bit more about our work, a little bit more about how we engage partners, the partner experience, and the intended impact of collaboration. And before I turn it over to my esteemed colleagues, I want to share with you this work we are passionate about, we are committed to, and we believe we come in service both to our partners and students. And I want to thank you for spending this time to learn a little bit more about us. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jennifer Saperka, who'll lead our first conversation about pathways.
Awesome. Thank you, Therese. Just wanted to say hello to everyone. I will go ahead and introduce and welcome our first panel. Emily Maroney is the Executive Director for Transfer Initiatives at University of Colorado, Denver. Bill Henry is the Associate Vice President for Faculty Affairs at Metropolitan State University of Denver. Ruth Ann Orihuela is the Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs at Community College of Denver. Linda Van Doren is the Vice President of Education at Emily Griffith Technical College. And Bernard McCune is the Senior Executive Director for Career and College Success at Denver Public Schools. I appreciate you guys and all your long titles. So now that Therese has described the overall vision for the work and the strategy which guides Dean's interactions with each of your organizations, we wanted to give those of you in our audience today the opportunity to hear directly from leaders within your institutions who are also leading this collaborative work. So this type of an event is something that we want to do on an annual basis. Obviously last year things got screwed up, but it's a great way for us to tie the work that you're doing directly with Dean to this overall vision and strategy. And this has been, you know, a few of you have requested this along the way. Well, how is everyone else involved, and how does my piece of the puzzle sort of fit with everything else that's happening? So it's hopefully today will give you an idea about these overarching strategies that are guiding the work, and how the work that you're doing, maybe not even directly related to Dean, is still related to this work. So, for our panel, let's talk about how collaboration through Dean supports and accelerates each of your organization's strategies and connects initiatives across partners. So, I'm laughing at this next line. So, COVID obviously disrupted everything. It's probably the understatement of the year, but education in particular. So, as education leaders are thinking about what's next, how can we as a partnership capitalize upon the momentum of the rapid changes already underway and leverage Dean to build a new and better education to career pathways system? So, Bernard, I would love to start with you. DPS is the starting point for launching traditional age students along their academic and career pathways. So, could you talk a little bit about how just talk about some of DPS's strategies as well as how DPS is leveraging partnership through Dean?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So, Denver Public Schools, our goal and our mission is to make sure that all our students are ready for career and college success. And so, what that means is we want them to have a great experience that prepares them while they're with us, but even more importantly, to have success after they leave us. So, we have intentionally um, created pathways for students that start in high school. Actually, our work with exposing them to pathways actually starts much earlier on. So we have a K K2 and through strategy for our students, and so they will get into aligned pathways that start in high school, but have multiple on and off ramps that lead to careers. That means that they'll get credentials either at a technical college, 2, 4 year, and graduate degrees, depending on which careers that they're interested in. And so we are creating and want to create a system where students get to choose um, those on and off ramps. And the data that was showed earlier is something that we and the entire country have to improve on. So that data, when it talks about the number of DPS students who enroll in college and also the ones who graduate, is abysmal and not where we want it to be. It is actually on par with national data, but the partnership with Dean is one that is so exciting because we don't want to be on par and be compared with abysmal national data. We actually want to lead in this space. And so we want to create opportunities for our students and actually show nationally and internationally how you actually get this done right. And so Dean has helped us, or is a great convener of people with like minds and like goals for our students so that we can connect and talk together and build the structures that allow for student success in both the secondary but also post-secondary realm.
That's awesome. Bernard, could you also talk just a little bit about, your vision for that starting early piece? Students are using the ICAP as early as middle school, right?
Yeah, and so the ICAP is a great tool and lever for students to begin to explore careers and what careers they might be interested in. And the fact that it is a state tool and that we can use it to help students while they're in middle school, high school, and then work with some of the awesome partners who are in these great boxes on this screen to actually make sure that that information is transferred but actually acted upon when they go on to post-secondary or different opportunities, which could include as well internships and apprenticeships, is just a great tool that the state of Colorado has an advantage over other places in the country.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to sort of talk about how we're building that structure that supports students along the way. And to Teresa's point, it's so that students aren't burdened with trying to figure out how to navigate the system so they can actually concentrate on their learning and their career goals. So as we think about a pathway strategy that starts in high school or even before, Emily Griffith Technical College sits in this really unique space as part of the K-12 school district and as a post-secondary arm of DPS. So Linda, could you talk a little bit more about the role of Emily Griffith and the opportunities that you're excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Jennifer. As you mentioned, we are, as a technical college, an area technical college in Colorado, we are a public institution. Our programs are approved by the Colorado Community College System. Our teachers are credentialed through the Colorado Community College System, and we're DPS. We report up through Bernard's arm of the Denver Public School District. So we are able to provide a unique learning experience for our adult learners, as well as for our concurrently enrolled high school students as well. Things that I'm really excited about, just looking at the panel that we've got together today, we're at a very unique spot in our history, not only from a workforce education perspective, but also I think that COVID has accelerated some of the work that we've started doing, and it's also highlighted some real challenges that we have in our systems, and where our systems have shown themselves to be inequitable and sometimes have barriers even built into those systems. So the work that this group is doing under Dean leadership and with my fellow colleagues here is really exciting, because we're able to really start to pull apart those systems and identify where those barriers are built in and disassemble, take them apart, and let's rebuild them from a truly student-centric and an economic perspective to really help align students, programs, systems, policies, procedures to ensure that there is a smooth transition throughout this pathway. Looking at the partners that we have in this work is what really excites me. We've got I feel the right governmental agencies. We've got, educational providers. We have, through the work that our Department of Labor and Employment is doing with the Workforce Development Council, we're beginning to really engage with our employer partners. And I think that that's what's truly exciting. So work that we're doing that jazzes me every day is, we're aligning, my colleague Ruth Ann, who's going to be speaking, I think, after me at CCD, we're aligning all of our programs to ensure seamless credit transferability. We're working directly with partners at our four-year institutions to, again, align programs for seamless transferability for students. We don't want students to lose credits as they're going through this process. And we want to make sure that our programs are really relevant and meaningful. At the beginning of the talk, Katie talked about our state's 66% goal of getting our state population post-secondary credentials. And we are there to support that through CTE programs, certificate programs, registered apprenticeship programs, and other programs that are meaningful to both our students' learning outcomes as well as to our supporting industry partners and employers.
That's awesome. I love the way that Emily Griffith is really focused on, these pathways and CTE. I mean, it's such a great way to connect students to their future careers. And we talk about students all the time. We're working on adapting this language of all learners, because students today might not fit that traditional mold. So we want to make sure that we're inclusive of that. And I know that Emily Griffith serves a lot of adult learners as well.
Sure do. Yep, appreciate that.
Yeah, so another institution that works in a unique space is Community College of Denver. So Ruth Ann, do you want to talk about the unique role of community colleges in general and CCD specifically in this K-12 pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I think that community colleges in general, when we do what we do well, right? We serve as a driver, as an engine for helping our communities get to livable wage jobs for our community members. And I do think that Community College of Denver in particular sits at the nexus of a lot of this work. I'm grateful for the many tables that I get to engage in with Linda, with Bernard, with Bill, with Emily, across the board in terms of, with respect to Denver Public Schools, building out concurrent enrollment opportunities, not just so that students have opportunities to take classes, but so that students have opportunities to take classes that are included in stackable certificates, right? So that more and more students, even while they're in high school, are earning stackable credentials leading to high wage, in-demand jobs before graduation, right? That then also stack to associate degrees offered here at Community College of Denver or at Emily Griffith Technical College in terms of those certificates, those stackable certificates. Grateful also for the partnership, as Linda said, with Emily Griffith Technical College and the work that we're doing to align certificates to certificates and certificates to Associate of Applied Science degrees at Community College of Denver, so students see their paths, as Bernard said, to and through post-secondary education to credential attainment. And then on the flip side, right, CCD, with regard to this pipeline, we have the benefit of working with Metropolitan State University Denver and University of Colorado Denver to build out the continuation, right? So all of our agreements, our articulation agreements with MSU Denver and with UC Denver, they include 8-semester plans so that students can see themselves working on their certificate degrees while at CCD, but know also what comes next in that pathway. And so the work that we're doing with co-advising and making sure that students, the transition as they transfer from Community College of Denver to their next 4-year space, that is as seamless as possible and they know their next steps. I'm so grateful to have that opportunity. So just in summary, say something that Dr. Nate Easley once said in a meeting that really hit me, right? When you present those numbers in terms of who is graduating, who is going on for college credential after graduation, we have a lot of work to do because if you see those numbers, we have work to do to help bridge that gap. Dr. Nate Easley said, it's not that we have a leaky pipeline, it's that our pipeline is broken, right? And so if we can continue these efforts to build out stackable credentials, certificates to degrees, and offer those more and more in the high schools, and help students make that effective transfer, not just with credit, but with credit that is certificate and associate degree relevant, and provide them that trajectory, that GPS on their way. I mean, that I think is really how we shore up that pipeline. And I think Community College of Denver has a big role to play in that. Also, as Linda said, I'll just highlight too the work that we're doing with regard to work-based learning, the pre-apprenticeships, the apprenticeship programs, the industry partners that we're engaging with. We know that our Denver Public Schools and Emily Griffith Technical College partners are also engaging with. So what opportunities do we have to go to those industry partners together to tell that story of success on success for our shared students as we move forward?
I love that. I especially love the way you talk about community and how, CCD's role in the community and CCD's, serving the community, because it's not just the individual learners that we're talking about. It's the economic opportunities that we're connecting them to that will benefit their families, their immediate community, and our state and nation as a whole. So I love that that's a part of what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, as a Hispanic serving institution, our student populations are very similar to Denver Public Schools. We've got a lot of work to do, and one of the things that motivates us and our students is that ability to give back to family, give back to community, and so that is something that just really aligns with our mission as a community college.
Nice. So, Bill, as DPS and Emily Griffith and CCD have outlined the pathways that are being created for students beginning in high school, how is MSU Denver as a receiving institution thinking about serving its transfer students?
Thank you for that question, Jennifer. Transfer students are an incredibly important population for MSU Denver. Our president frequently talks about the zigzaggy lives that our students lead. And that old model of a student entering college right out of high school and finishing in 4 years, taking 15 credits per semester, to a large extent, that that model is in many cases outdated. So we have to have multiple on-ramps and off-ramps for students whose path is more complex. So MSU Denver, we have committed ourselves to what we have referred to as the Manhattan Project for transfer. And that is, we have committed ourselves as an institution 100% to doing everything that we can possibly do to make ourselves a national leader in supporting our transfer students. This work has gone on a couple of different fronts. We have done deep dives, and we continue to do deep dives on our policies related to transfers. And we are revising and in some cases creating new policies to make sure that process is as seamless as possible. We have upgraded our technology to speed up the process and again to make it as easy as possible for those transfer students. But a third area, and one that I want to spend a little bit more time on this morning, is the partnerships that we have with the other institutions that are represented on this panel. A significant portion of the work that we have done with Dean has really been focused on those partnerships and building out those pathways. And I'll just highlight 3 examples. The first is in the field of health. And a great example of the work that we've been doing with Dean is the agreement that we currently have with the Community College of Denver related to nutrition. Built into the CCD Associate's degree that supports a nutrition career are 3 MSU Denver courses. And so students take those classes with us. Those classes then transfer back to CCD. And what that means is that when those students are ready to transfer onto a 4-year institution or transfer on to MSU Denver, they already have a relationship with us. They know us. They've been here. They know that they can succeed at MSU Denver. So that is an example of a pathway agreement that really does support and smooth that transition for our transfer students. In the STEM area, Dean was instrumental in arranging an articulation agreement among Denver Public Schools, CU Denver, MSU Denver, Community College of Denver in the area of mechanical engineering. Across each of those institutions, coursework completed at those institutions can stack onto an associate's degree and then on moving forward into a 4-year degree. And then finally, in the area of banking, our banking major. This major incorporates work that can be completed either in concurrent enrollment programs or at technical schools such as Emily Griffith, and will build toward a bachelor's degree in banking. So these are just 3 examples of how the work that we've been doing with Dean has really supported the development of those pathways and strengthened our ability to support our transfer students.
Thank you, Bill. I love those concrete examples so it can kind of give our audience an idea about what the work actually produces. So Emily, speaking of transfer, you have a very unique role at CU Denver that focuses specifically on transfer initiatives. So we would love to hear more about your role and how the Dean partnership has helped you leverage opportunities.
Absolutely. I feel like I could echo a lot of almost everything that everyone has said. I'm like, oh, I was going to say that. Oh, I don't have to say that now. Yeah, I just want to say, like, Dean has helped so much, and partners, the people you see on this call have helped so much as thought partners and support in this work. It's so easy to silo yourself into one outcome, but to not look at the many facets and people that impact the moving parts of that. And so if you've been following CU Denver, my role is unique. And so I've had the privilege to bring to our community and our partners at large the past 2 years focusing on improving the transfer experience and streamlining internal processes. That has looked through financial aid, guided pathway maps, so pathway maps 60 plus 60s for all of our majors, or mandatory orientation, looking at how advising really connects with the students across our partners, as well as just looking at time to degree. Where are we really hitting hiccups for these students? So with Dean and the partners have been great at leveraging that shared template for direct pathways. So Emily Griffith Technical College, CCD to CU Denver and MSU Denver. Accepting credit, you're gonna hear that a lot, where students don't lose credit. So on our end, seeing where GT pathway really aligns to our core in that mission. Centralizing our agreements. We have a lot of agreements going on, and sometimes it's hard to lose track of that. So all of our partners coming together to find a centralized area to access and update these agreements as we really move forward. And that's really going to be built upon with the data agreements we're trying to build into those. Dean is a great, and I'm sure everyone's going to nod, bridging relationships, bringing the hard conversations to the table and saying, okay, what's the first step to really moving this forward to support the mapping and the engagement of the student towards that career, towards that degree? And so really getting faculty across the board to come together in that aligned vision. At CU Denver, we're really focusing on intentional work with experiential learning. So this new grant really supporting through FTE and other supports in an equitable outcome lens. The support of advancement through Links Connect, our new Links Connect, more so in its year 1.5 now, but starting with K-12 and moving beyond with our industry partners and really looking at how to leverage those supports for our students. Data. I say data and everyone goes, but where can we share our practice to tell the story through data? We know we're bringing a lot of great things to the table through this work together. And so how do we narrate the student experience that tells that story of this equitable and stackable opportunity towards industry supported jobs and economic outcome? It's going to be critical. And so really honing that lens across our partners and at CU Denver to say, where are we tracking students? Where do we need to intercede more for students? And how can we really tell this story intentionally? And then speaking of intentionality, we've done a lot, even more broadly at CU Denver. So looking at admissions promise and saying, how do we build upon that and revamping it with the community college system into bridge to bachelor's degree? Looking at guaranteed admissions and saying, we want to support the students that maybe at the front end don't know what they want to do career-wise or educationally, but giving them an option as they hit that 45 credit hour mark to stack their degrees, to stack their associate's degree into a bachelor's degree. And so working with the community college system here in Colorado to offer guaranteed admissions to all associate's degree completed students who want to continue. And so I think what's big and one of my favorite things about Dean and the work with bridging and leveraging is really connecting our local, our CU Denver, our MSU, our partner initiatives with our broader state agencies. So on this call, you're going to hear from Colorado Department of Education, Colorado Department of Higher Education, the community college system, the Workforce and Development Center. And so being able to bring all those people together on a single call often to talk about the various levels of what we do is just something that I'm so excited about and have been so privileged to work with and to have members of our CU Denver community work with. And so I also say ditto to everything that everyone has said. If I had more time, I could go on and on and on, but I see the cue.
So, me just take my chair. I just want to thank you all so much for participating on this panel, but being, the dedicated partners, we couldn't have asked for better partners. So thank you so much. So I will turn it over to Raina to talk about how this strategy plays out at the state level.
Thank you, Jennifer, and all my panelists, if you'll turn your videos on. And thank you to our education partners that just shared about how they're thinking about local implementation of these pathways strategies. Now we're going to take a closer look at how that local implementation in the schools and colleges connects to the work that's happening at the state level. So Dean plays a unique role with our state level partners, really connecting them in a focused and intentional way to local implementation strategies in Denver Public Schools. And connecting those local practices at the state and regional level is critical in then building and scaling a system that can work for all learners across the state. Dean works and aligns with and builds from the state's attainment, equity, and workforce goals, connecting the work of our key state level partners, Department of Higher Education, Department of Education, the Community College System, Workforce Development Council, and others to build effective and scalable practices that can help the state in reaching its goals. So these regional and state partnerships are a first step in driving systems level change. That systems level change that Therese talked about that will increase high value credential completion and family living wage opportunities, especially for populations that have historically been excluded from those opportunities that come with, from the social and economic mobility that come with those opportunities. So let me introduce my panel of state level experts. We've got Kim Post from the Department of Higher Education, Chief Student Success and Academic Affairs Officer, Andy Tucker, Director of Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness at the Colorado Department of Education, Victoria Crownover, the Perkins Plan Manager at the Colorado Community College System, and the Managing Director of Colorado Workforce Development Council, Lee Wheeler Berliner. Thank you all for being here today. And Kim, I'd like to start with you for a high-level view of the statewide, state-level collaboration and connection. Could you talk a little bit about how and why CDHE and other state agencies are collaborating to connect state policy initiatives to the local implementation of pathways within districts, schools, and colleges through the Dean work?
Thank you so much, Raina. It's a pleasure to be here. And first thing I'll say is that I've been involved with Dean since its very inception. So excited to see sort of this direction that Dean has been going over the years. You know, as a starting point, it has to be known that we're a state agency and we don't work with students and programs directly. You know, I often say we're the government, we're here to help, at which point most people just sort of roll their eyes and chuckle. Sorry about my notifications. As a policy setting body, our role is to implement the law and to develop a coherent state policy framework. And our work is a long game, the results of which no one ever really knows, or the general public doesn't really know until many years post-implementation. That said, we have a really robust, innovative framework that embraces the student experience, from transfer to work-based learning, prior learning assessment, articulation agreements, advising, and equity-based practices. And we work collaboratively among those other state agencies to ensure that our approach is both connected and coherent. And this really helps elevate what works as we work with law and policymakers across the state. Dean is focused on leveraging those cross-agency collaborations to further strengthen and align those state initiatives that support career pathways at the local level. And what we find is that when you focus on the local community, when you're able to test policy implementation at the local level, it helps to inform that broader state level strategy. For example, we don't have to write a new law about, you know, pathway integration right yet, because what we're doing is we're sort of rapid testing the work that we're doing that will help inform later. We can scrutinize how intentional pathways support student success as a proof point that can be expanded to many, many other areas throughout the state. Dean and all of its partners are also focused on an overall highly aligned pathway strategy that addresses equity gaps and helps drive our state's equity agenda. Policy that will support a more equitable local implementation strategy. We know that we can look at the work that's happening in Denver and apply it to other communities to help inform their own strategy. Our Colorado Equity Champions Coalition Equity Report, which was released recently, and I'm happy to put that in the chat in a minute. I already said this, the more support, local support we have for these efforts, the more we'll be able to move the needle and help close those equity gaps. Dean participates in the Equity Champions Coalition and is encouraging other partners to also sign on. We also take this opportunity at the local level to be able to document best practices that will help it scale our work around work-based learning, prior learning assessment, advising, and DEI. And I'm going to stop right there because I know that we're a little bit behind and wanted to give our other partners a chance to weigh in.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. That was a great high-level overview of just some of the ways in which state agencies are thinking about collaborating and documenting and spreading the impact of the work that's happening at the local level. Andy, could you go into a little bit, more detail as you think about some of the best opportunities that we have at the local level to leverage state policy related to career pathways? Are there examples already at play?
Yeah, there are, and thanks for the question. Thanks for having me here today. I think that Bernard already spoke a little bit about one of the strategies that I think is so important. I'll speak about two today. One is the ICAP, so the individual career and academic planning process, which is just so vital in helping to really individualize education. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about meeting students where they are, helping them to develop and to learn who they are so that they get on a career path that makes sense for them, right? We're talking about career development here overall. So the ICAP is a great tool to do that. Denver Public Schools, and I'm going to be talking obviously from the K-12 perspective primarily, but Denver Public Schools has already done a great job in developing the ICAP all the way from middle school through high school and helping students to really understand their strengths, their interests, and where those strengths and interests can lead them. The other big policy that is being implemented right now is the Colorado's graduation guidelines. It really is pathway development. It's encouraging pathway development. It encourages all of these different ways that students can gain experiences while they're in their K-12 education and how they can truly demonstrate their post-secondary and workforce readiness through a variety of different pathways. So it incentivizes in many ways schools and districts to adopt work-based learning opportunities, to implement more concurrent enrollment opportunities for students, to help students to develop and to earn industry certifications. So these two policies are just vital in helping drive students towards post-secondary and workforce readiness. Working with Dean, and Dean has already been working with DPS and the higher ed institutions on this call to really help develop a ICAP that spans K-12 to higher ed. I think that's going to be an incredibly valuable tool. And as Kim mentioned, what it allows us to do is then highlight that to other entities and other local education providers across the state so they can learn how to really build that advising framework that leads from early childhood all the way through post-secondary education. I'll stop there knowing that we have a limited amount of time, but thank you all for letting me speak today.
Thanks, Andy. It's just such a great reminder I hope to everyone listening today, how much the work that they're doing with all of you as partners and with Dean has the potential to impact so many students across the state as we think about leveraging that work and expanding on it. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to something we've alluded to before, but another critical perspective is that of the employer and our industry partners. And so I'd like to ask Lee, how do industry partners want to be engaged in this work to design and develop career pathways, work-based learning opportunities, industry certifications, and just generally the return on investment for students? How do we engage employers? How do they want to be engaged?
Great, thanks so much for the question, and it's great to be here. First off, I think it's important to note that from an industry perspective, the concept of return on investment and creating a positive ROI is not just about students. Industry is focused on a positive ROI for students, for their individual companies and businesses, and for communities as well. And that community-wide ROI really comes about when the focus is on workforce development. And therefore, we really want to reframe the conversation in our culture to move away from just being about a college-bound culture to being a career-bound culture. And we love working with Dean because Dean is so laser focused on creating that career-bound culture that has the on and the off ramps for students that align with industry demand and those high value stackable credentials along the entire work-based learning continuum. First and foremost, we know that businesses and industry want to be engaged and want to be at this table. The 2020 Sector Partnership Business Impact Survey that our office conducted in the fall revealed that 55% of companies want to learn more about career pathways. That same number want to learn more about work-based learning opportunities, and more than 60% of companies want to dig deeper into apprenticeships. And when we understand exactly what industry is thinking about and what that demand looks like, we can then focus in on the highest value pathways for students who have traditionally been excluded. Businesses want to be at the table to set up work-based learning opportunities that create the right type of value. If you think about equity, as Therese started off this conversation focusing in on, far too many students over the years have had to forego internships that don't pay anything, that create credit, which can launch careers. And they've had to forego that because they need income right now. And they need to get a job that is doing something different, not focused on their long-term career, but is bringing money in the door. And we need to work with companies to figure out what the demand looks like and how we can set up work-based learning opportunities that are going to solve for that problem and help launch careers for individuals of all types. The Workforce Development Council is here to be a partner. Through the Talent Pipeline Report, which we produce annually with a lot of other state agencies and partners, we dig into the data on top jobs. We know what the number of job openings are, and we know what skills are needed to be successful in those careers and in those opportunities. And so we're excited to be partnering with Dean to work with its partners to help assess the existing industry relationships and identify ways that we can easily and efficiently plug businesses into career development opportunities. In the Denver area, that includes a focus on IT, healthcare, business operations, specifically around cybersecurity right now. And what's great is that things we test in Denver with Dean, our office can then help to scale statewide.
There, done, easy. Thank you. There's a lot of work to be done, but a lot of enthusiasm coming from our employer partners and industry partners. So, and everyone at this table is excited to engage in that. Finally, I want to ask a question of Victoria from the community college system. You know, one of the things Dean is really excited about right now is this potential of around the Perkins 5 funding. And of course, that's the funding for career and technical education, and how we could increase local collaboration that's happening around Perkins 5. So imagine a model where for Denver public school students coming out of high school, going on to technical community college, potentially beyond, and how that model of collaboration that happens to align those pathways for those students around CTE could be a national model. It's very exciting. So Victoria, could you talk a little bit about those opportunities for collaboration at the local level around Perkins 5?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And part of what I'll be saying is really just a reiteration of all of the messages that we've all been hearing today from the other panelists now and in our earlier panel. But really just that the community college system and the career and technical education programming that we help with throughout the state is kind of at the intersection of this K-12 post-secondary workforce nexus. And so we're just so excited about the opportunities in the new reauthorized federal Perkins 5 legislation to really think about how we can be innovative in encouraging those partnerships and that accountability and those equity and access pieces for all learners as they progress through career pathways. And so one of the main mechanisms for doing this in Perkins 5 is actually through what's called a comprehensive local needs assessment. So that's really work that Dean has been engaged in, is engaged in, and is now developing strategies and testing in the real world. And so that's those collaborations and understanding what the needs are of stakeholder groups and working across partnerships is really where the power in making change for our learners comes from. And like Lee and several others have mentioned, the ability to sort of incubate, if you will, and then as a state agency, scale that work or replicate it across the state in other areas. So one of the things that Andy mentioned is actually work-based learning and just the power that students have once they have identified an ICAP plan and had that good career conversation and coaching to actually think about how they can practice and get some experience, whether it's at work, whether it's in conjunction with someone in the workforce. And with regards to Perkins, work-based learning is one of the things that we now measure to help us understand the strength of the pathway that students are participating in. And so that provides a lot of opportunity for innovation and thinking about how we're serving and providing access to each and every student and learner that we have in our state, whether it's at the secondary level or the post-secondary level, as they continue through their pathway toward employment. So I just wanted to say also that with regard to that data, and not just with work-based learning, but using the data as a storytelling mechanism can really help us make good decisions as we continue to expand upon the work in the future, taking what we've learned in local areas like in the Denver area and then transferring it on. So thank you again for having us today, and I'll wrap up.
That's such an important perspective to bring career and technical education into the conversation. It's a critical part of it. So I want to thank the panel. We could go on, but we won't because we have one more speaker that we'd like to end our hour with today. So thank you, panel, for shedding some light on how this work that we're doing in Denver Public Schools and with Emily Griffith, CCD, CU Denver, and Metro State University is really has the potential to impact a broad number of students across our state. So thank you. I'd like to now introduce Amber Anderson from the City and County of Denver, Office of Children's Affairs, and she's going to give us just a little perspective on how this work at the local, state, and regional levels is really crucial to the city's vision for an economically diverse, vibrant, and prosperous community. So welcome, Amber. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for inviting us here. I'm here on behalf of Mayor Hancock, and just want to extend our congratulations, first of all, to Dean for all of the work. Our mission in OCA is to support Denver agencies, the community like Dean, and our service providers in ensuring that all children and youth have basic needs met, are ready for kindergarten, have the opportunity to succeed academically and professionally. So this notion of a critical pathway and success in a post-secondary environment is really essential to us, obviously, and particularly in a pandemic. With Dean Partners, we're aligned to our City Ed Compact goals, to our Denver Comprehensive Plan 2040, and really looking at this opportunity to move folks to living wage employment. So we're ensuring economic mobility. These are things that we've all been talking about for the past little while. Improve access to opportunity, ensure that Denver has a productive, competitive, and knowledgeable workforce, and enable Denver's youth to access quality education and compete in the global economy. One of the things that we really love to look at, though, is that this is really about the learners. This is not about the institutions. This is the institutions exist to support the learners. And we're so excited that all of you are here today to support our learners. So on behalf of the city, Mayor Hancock, we just want to say thank you. We're proud to be a part of Dean, and we wish you all success in our work.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.